An interesting one, this. Facebook is set to build 1,500 homes in California as part of plans to turn its headquarters into a village. The technology giant also intends to build a supermarket and a pharmacy at the campus in Silicon Valley. It's all part of the company's push to create communities online and now for real, but will it work? Well, let's head to New York, where we'll find the property expert and managing director at Blackstock Consulting, Andrew Teacher. Andrew, good to speak to you again. There's actually nothing new about this particular idea, is there? I recall there's a place in Scotland called New Lanark, where back in the 18th century, an industrialist built his cotton mills and accommodation for the workers side by side, except that those cotton mill workers were probably in need of housing in a way that Facebook employees probably aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect the Scottish cotton mill workers probably didn't have any ping pong tables either, or maybe cushions and free fruits that tech firms have. I mean, look, this is the latest in a long line of trends. We've seen two things happening in the tech world over the last couple of months. You've seen Amazon coming into the physical world, buying up Whole Foods. They want physical stores to sell you product. Now, Facebook, it seems, want actual bricks and mortar to build a real world community. And I think this is part of another trend, really, in the tech industry, which is a game called My Campus is Bigger Than Yours. And I think it's part of the pressure that these businesses face to recruit and retain staff. And obviously San Francisco has many similar problems to London in that it's very crowded, the traffic is appalling, house prices are ridiculous. But what seems to me is slightly paradoxical, I suppose, is that Facebook, Apple, Google, they've got bags of money, a lot of it squirreled overseas. They don't want to repatriate because they'll have to pay loads of tax on it. And yet San Francisco, a very rich city, has got a really acute homelessness problem. It's got a really acute drug problem, and there isn't really much in the way of usable public transit in the way that UK cities have. And I think you could make an argument that says these businesses should be prioritising investment in public infrastructure, which can make these sorts of communities a little more outward-facing than something like this. Although it's worth stressing that Facebook does say on its blog post that 200 of the proposed 1,500 apartments that it's building will be rented at below market rent, whatever that actually means.
Yeah, indeed. And doesn't this also represent something of an ideological shift? I mean, the whole success of social media companies such as Facebook was predicated on the idea that your online existence was just as important as what happened IRL in real life. But actually, what Facebook appears to be conceding is, everyone needs a place to stay. Everyone needs the creature comforts that are provided in communities such as this. And if they're going to attract the best engineers, they need to do something like this.
Well, quite. And that's exactly the same sort of perk that you see in many, many businesses. Friends of mine that work in law firms in London, they have free hair salons, pedicures, all sorts of things. And all of these sorts of provisions are made by businesses to keep their staff at work for longer. But I think the lesson that we can learn from this in Britain is that communities do need to be mixed. And I think this plan by Facebook in Menlo Park outside California. Menlo Park, incidentally, is where hallucinogenic drugs were discovered some decades back. There's a little fact for you along with your cotton mill story. But 56 acres, it's broadly around the same size as King's Cross in central London, which was redeveloped over the last 10 years around the International Rail Hub there. And that's got Google's campus there, it's got Universal Music, it's got the London School of Fashion, and lots of different homes for rent and for ownership as well. That's a great example of urban regeneration. We've got another scheme called NOMA in Manchester, which is extending the city centre. It's connecting up the Northern Quarter, which is the cultural hub in Manchester, with loads of trendy bars and independent pubs, with Victoria Station. And all of these sorts of schemes will have a mix of education, of offices, of retail, of leisure, and of apartment buildings, such as Moda Living, which you're going to see in Manchester. And the great thing about these projects is that they're connected directly with public rail hubs such as Victoria, such as King's Cross, and that means that they're very accessible to everybody. And I suppose my anxiety with projects like this proposed scheme in Menlo Park is that it's not. Whilst they said it's going to be accessible to the public, what's it really doing for the city around it? And that I think is one question that we should be asking here.
Well, on a related point then, Andrew, will you be shedding a tear for those poor Facebook engineers who now, in essence, are essentially living at the office?
Well, look, they're paid pretty well, ideally, if in a world where I had enough brain power to code, I'd probably be doing that as well. I think there are bigger questions that we need to ask, not just around where $300,000 a year geeks are going to live, but more where some of the real people that make cities run are going to live. So the paramedics, the firemen, the baristas that work in all the coffee shops where entrepreneurs are setting up new businesses, that those guys aren't earning $300,000 a year and living in a fancy apartment. And the problem that San Francisco, London are both going to face soon is that if we don't take a slightly more inclusive attitude to how we build up the urban realm, we're going to be in a situation where you've got too many geeks and nobody to make their coffee.
Indeed. Andrew, many thanks for joining us on Sky News once again. That's Andrew Teacher, MD at Blackstock Consulting. And let's bring you some of the day's other news now.